But wow, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, that was going to be my first question is how's it going so far?
It's going really great. So when I was first discerning whether or not I should run for something, I was hearing from people that they felt I would be a good candidate for Congress, and just all of the response we've gotten from the public, from the press, it's just been so positive and so overwhelming. So it's really affirming that we're moving in the right direction.
I want to ask you about a few policy issues first, because obviously you've been supportive of term limits, and I saw you told the Des Moines Register that's something you'll continue to work on. Are you making a term limits pledge, like whether or not that's the law, that's something that you will adhere to, or is it more that you want to make term limits the policy for Congress?
I would like to see a policy. I don't know if I'm necessarily the problem, because I don't just tend to stay in one place for too long. I do my job and I move on. But for me, I think 12 years should be plenty for somebody to get their work done. I don't know if that's the right number, but, for me, I don't anticipate making a career out of this. I have a job to do, and that's to flip Congress, so we have some balance in our federal government, and to make sure that the people of Iowa are represented in this moment. Right now, they don't have a voice.
And in terms of the individual stocks and the stock trading, are you already divested from individual stock holdings, or is that something that you plan to do if you haven't already?
Yeah, I do not own any individual stocks.
Right. Okay.
So I'm like a lot of Americans who has 401k, and, through the state government, I do have an IPERS pension, but like most Americans, we don't own stock. This is, kind of an elite issue, but it's really important that those folks who have that insider knowledge aren't using that information to make financial decisions to profit for themselves.
I noticed that in your opening statement and your comments to the Des Moines Register, you really emphasized the rising costs, and clearly that's going to be a continuing issue, I think, especially with the tariffs. Are there other issues that you plan to highlight besides the cost of living type issues?
Well, connected to cost of living are a lot of things. So food insecurity and housing access, lack of affordable housing, healthcare access, the cost of higher education, and the quality of our public schools. So there are all these things that are connected to the rising costs and the challenges that families are facing right now. Those are all issues that I've cared deeply about and worked on in state government. Those continue to be really important issues to me, because I know they are the things that are impacting my neighbors' lives, and the federal government has a really important role in them.
Another issue that you've worked a lot on is reproductive rights, and that was something that a lot of Democratic candidates and groups made a central issue of the 2024 campaign, and some people felt that maybe it was too emphasized in the campaigns. Do you have any thoughts about where reproductive rights fits in to your campaign?
It's still a really important issue for me. Reproductive rights were one of the things that brought me to the Iowa State Capitol in the early days, in terms of advocacy actions and contacting my legislators. It's still very much a significant issue. I don't think there's just one issue, and that's sometimes the challenge with political campaigns, especially when you're running TV commercials, is they pick kind of one thing to focus in on. But for Americans, there are a lot of different things that matter to folks, and I'm always surprised at the variety of issues that come up when I'm knocking doors, when I'm visiting with people one-on-one. There's so many things that matter to folks, so it's an issue that matters. It is not the only thing.
Speaking of TV ads, so the ads against you last year, I think, heavily emphasized transgender issues, and I already saw that the Republican statement that they gave the Des Moines Register was already talking about girls' sports, or however they phrased it. So what would be your response to that, to the way Republicans have made that issue a central point, specifically against you and other Democratic candidates?
every Democrat on, and they attacked me on it in 22 and 24, and they will attack me on it again this year. It's generic. They're grasping. There's a lot of really important work that the party is not doing for the people of Iowa, and so they're trying to deflect and distract. And so this is an issue that really kind of hits a nerve for a certain population of folks, and it's, we're going to see a lot more of this again, because that's all they know to do is attack. They're always like radical Sarah Trone Garriott over and over again. I've talked to people in my community. They're like, I saw those commercials. I know you. They're ridiculous. That's not what you're like at all. And what helps me to combat those ridiculous ads is being present and knowing people that cuts through the BS. And so that is the challenge, again, in a different kind of campaign. How do I make sure that people have an opportunity to get to know who I really am, and realize that these ads are just garbage?
That was kind of going to be my next question. How many doors, roughly, ballpark, would you say you knocked during the 2024 cycle?
The 24 cycle, me personally alone, I think it was about 7,000 doors.
Right.
Yeah, but, we also had other folks out knocking with me. But, I started in January of 24 and knocked right through November. But, there's the knocking doors piece. But then I also in my life have a lot of different ways of showing up and connecting with different kinds of people. And that also makes a big difference, too.
I was just going to ask, because over the scope of a congressional district, you really can't hit as many. You can't personally reach as large a percentage of the electorate as you can in a state Senate district. So I was going to ask you about how do you plan to get out there and let people get to know you?
So of course I will do some doors. I will be showing up at different events and different communities, but I've built a reputation and I've built relationships over the last 3 cycles of running in the 3rd district. And so that is really going to help provide a foundation, because I have lots of people in the community who can speak on my behalf, who can, represent me well to their networks and their communities. And so I really have a leg up over a lot of candidates in the state, and anyone who might want to run in this 3rd district.
I saw your press release quoted Dennis Mansager. Should we expect more Republican endorsers coming in the coming months? And what would be your message to Republican voters? This would be more for a general election question, but what would be your message to Republicans about why they should support you and not Zach Nunn, who might be more closely aligned with them on some issues?
Yeah, so I think Zach Nunn has failed constituents no matter what party we're in, because he's not holding open town halls. He's not showing up. He's not listening. He's not standing up. And there are a lot of folks who are really concerned about the chaos we're seeing at the federal level when it comes to our economy, these reckless tariffs, these, poorly thought out cuts, just indiscriminate actions happening, and just giving access to all of these really significant and sensitive sources of information and data for our country to people that who haven't been vetted, who we can't trust. So there's a lot of folks who are just truly horrified by how our federal government is being run right now. And Republicans, independents, Democrats are horrified by it. And so I have really positive connections with folks in my community. I hear all the time, Sarah, I'm a Republican, but I voted for you. I told my neighbors to vote for you. I told my neighbors not to vote for your opponent. And I've been really blessed to have these opportunities to get to know my neighbors and my constituents across political party lines. It's really my approach that I don't count anyone out and I don't take anyone for granted. And, sometimes it's hard being the only Democrat in the room, but you got to show up in order to get to know folks and then see the opportunities to work together.
And moving to the Democrats now, I would say one of the biggest fault lines in Democratic circles is how should the Democrats in Congress approach the Trump administration? If you're elected, obviously Trump would still be president at that time. And did you have an opinion about in March, like the House Democrats basically didn't vote for that continuing spending resolution, and so that could have theoretically led to a federal government shutdown. And then there was that smaller group of Senate Democrats who did vote for the spending resolution so as not to shut down the government. And did you have a position in that on like which side did the right thing, or how would you approach questions like that?
I think it really depends on the circumstances and the situation. We are seeing right now at the state level, even though Republicans have this supermajority in the House, in the Senate, they've got the governor's mansion, they're falling apart. There's chaos. There's dissension among the ranks. And I think that's true at the federal level too, and we are seeing that. And so there may be some opportunities to kind of put some pressure on those places and find some interesting, unique alliances. But, we've got to work towards the goal, which is making sure that government works for the people, making sure that we're not sacrificing the vulnerable or putting folks at risk. Really important programs are on the line, like Medicaid and Social Security. And so we cannot let the vulnerable get hurt in order to try to achieve some policy goals. So that's really a priority for me.
So, I mean, in that, just going back to what happened in March, both sides were kind of arguing that they were standing up for the vulnerable, right? The people who didn't want to vote for the spending resolution said that this would be validating some of these illegal DOGE cuts and other issues, things the Trump administration is doing. And then the ones who said, well, we can't, if we shut down the government, then that's going to have the worst impact on the most vulnerable and will let them run wild even more. So kind of that's why I was wondering where you were on that.
Yeah, and so I am hoping that we can make the circumstances better by flipping this seat in Congress, because if we can get control of the House, then there will be more leverage. Then there will be more of an opportunity to press for the things that matter to us and likely a better outcome. The way that things are right now, there just isn't a lot of power that the Democrats have. They're really scrambling. I'm running to make sure that we have more leverage and more opportunity to bring balance and a check against the Trump administration.
Now, just drilling down on like a campaign strategy, it's not complicated in this district for a Democrat. You have to run up the score in Polk County, keep it close in Dallas County, and not get completely wiped out everywhere else. So can you describe, like, what would you say is your general strategy, both for, overall turnout, but also persuasion, like in Polk County, in Dallas County, and then in the rest of the district?
Well, we're not going to get too specific about my strategy for publication. But my strategy has always been, I have relationships with constituencies that just get ignored by everybody. So there's a lot of voters who don't come out to vote. They don't vote in off years. They don't vote down ballot. And I have relationships with religious minorities and newer Iowan communities, younger people, and it's important to connect with those folks to make sure they do turn out and they do vote down ballot. And I've been able to do that in my other races. And so that's an important piece of how I approach electoral politics.
What would be your message for Democratic voters who it looks like we're probably headed toward a competitive Democratic primary. And if a voter says, well, I really like Sarah, I like all of the candidates in the primary, why should they support you over other Democrats who might be running, who might agree with them on the issues as well?
Well, liking people is one thing, but winning elections is another. And we have to win this seat. I may not be the only Democrat on the ballot, but I am the only Democrat in Iowa that has won 3 back-to-back competitive races in Republican-leaning districts. I flipped a seat in 20. I flipped a seat in 22, and that was the year I took on the state Senate president. And then in 24, I held a seat that Donald Trump won. And those were all terrible years for Democrats in Iowa, and I still won. So nobody has the record I have. I have demonstrated time and again that I can win in tough districts, no matter what the circumstances are. That's what we need in this race.
And is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you think would be important for my readers to know?
You know, for me, public service is a calling. It is not, it's not a career path for me. And so my public service has taken a lot of different forms over the years. I was a hospital chaplain. I was a parish pastor. I work for a nonprofit food pantry network now. I'm a state senator. I am hearing the call from my community that this is the time. We need somebody to stand up. We need someone to win this seat. And this is the race that is going to make the biggest difference for the people of Iowa and our country. And as a person who's always looking for an opportunity to make things better, I know I have something really important to offer to this moment. And I've been hearing from my community in my discernment, but then also today, loud and clear, that I'm the person who can do it.
Well, thanks so much for taking some time. I'll let you get back to your very busy day. So,
right.
Do you have any predictions on when the legislature is going to be done? How much overtime?
Is it exciting to watch the 12 dissenters who are holding things up on one side, and then the House and the Senate and the governor at odds with each other? I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks. Every day that we're in session, when we go into overtime, it costs the state more money. We just need to get this done. Mm-hmm. So we just need to wrap it up.
I'm very curious to see how these 12 senators, whether they actually hold together on this or not. So,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, they seem motivated, but I haven't seen a ton of backbone in that caucus. So,
well, I think the funny thing from my perspective, I'm going to turn off the recorder.